Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, views, and of course opinions. Today is Thursday, September 15th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, the fight for reproductive rights continues, and we have VP Kamala Harris, and she's entering the chat, voicing her opinion on the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Meanwhile, a teen has to pay the family of her rapist. Find out what city's law is making her pay for a situation that many would consider self-defense. Then, an NFL Hall of Famer is caught up in a scheme to use illegal funds to help a sports team's facility, what newly released text messages have revealed. Plus, music exec Benny Pugh is here to talk about his new book, and you might be able to take a walk in Mariah Carey's shoes, and she's selling one of her prized possessions. We'll let you know what that is. We have all of that and so much more. Soulmates, this is our voice and our truth. So let's talk about it.
Good afternoon, and thanks for joining us. We start today with a fight on reproductive rights. Vice President Kamala Harris is taking the lead in the fight for women's rights at the White House. The VP met with civil rights and reproductive leaders earlier this week at the old Executive Office building. Now, during the meeting with mostly women, Harris said the Supreme Court's decision to overturn Roe v. Wade has created a health crisis in America. The White House has held several forums, mostly led by the vice president, about preserving abortion rights. Now, during the meeting, the leaders pushed for a range of policy changes, including protecting the privacy data of women who visit abortion clinics that could be marked from their geolocations from cell phones. So what's happening is a lot of times now, these states are using your location to figure out where you're going, what abortion clinic that you are visiting, and they are using that to prosecute you. And in this meeting, it was held with civil rights leaders, reproductive rights leaders, women's rights leaders, because they were saying that this is a civil rights crisis because these laws are targeting poor Black women. Depending on your status, depending on where you live, they are going after these women because they know that they can prosecute them and they don't have the means to fight them. And so the vice president wanted to bring together, Al Sharpton was in the meeting, the NAACP president, Derek Johnson was in the meeting, along with the president of Planned Parenthood, and come together and figure out ways in which we can stop some of these apps, some of these from tracking their locations, stop some of these states from using this information against Black women and basically policing Black bodies.
You know, I remember when this story broke. I remember I sent it to you very quickly. I found it, I saw it first on my Instagram feed, and I was like, wow, this is so very interesting because I don't think that any woman really thought about that. We use apps like Glow and Flow. There are so many different apps to, like, you know, track what's going on with your body, and I don't think that I even myself thought more than, oh, this is just an app to track what's going on with your body. But what I really like about this story, just yesterday, I believe, or it might have been the day before, Mimi, I was like, you know, where is VP Kamala Harris? What is she voicing her concern? Where is she voicing her passion? Or what is she passionate about? We haven't really heard from her. So I was really happy to see, okay, here she is. She was working on a master plan. And also, in this story, what really stuck out to me was mostly women. You said she met with mostly women, and that's very important because so many times we say, why are men making decisions on our bodies as women? So I'm really happy that there were mostly women in this meeting because those are the people that need to be making those very big decisions when it comes to a woman's body.
Absolutely. But I also, in that same sense, like that, there were a few men present that can also stand up and say, hey, although this is not, you know, our bodies and our fights, we still understand what is right and wrong, and we don't want to see this happen to our counterparts, right? So when you have powerful voices who are leading civil rights movements, standing up and saying this is wrong to police Black women and police bodies and police women overall, and saying something about it, that was also very powerful.
You know what? And that's a great. We have to stay on that for 1 second because absolutely right. The right men in the building are fine. You know, because that's like saying the military is just just for men. You know, no, we as women would like to be a part of some of these sports and some of these activities. So in this, of course, way more seriousness here, we're not saying that men shouldn't be able to join the fight for reproductive rights for women. What we're saying here is that the right men, those who are on the right side of what we're fighting for, can be in the building. And it's, like you said, there were some men, and clearly it seems like the right men were in this particular meeting.
Exactly.
I love that. The January 6th panel, it says that it's making progress in its probe in the days leading up to the attack on the U.S. Capitol. The committee has recently received evidence from the Secret Service. It comes after the panel demanded that the agency turn over its text message communications for January 5th and 6th in 2021. Earlier this year, Secret Service officials say that the agency lost messages from those days after it transferred messages from cell phones to a new mobile management software system. Just one message was turned over to Congress in response to the committee's request.
An African-American teen sex trafficking victim is being sentenced to 5 years of closely supervised probation in the death of an Iowa man who raped and trafficked her. 17-year-old Piper Lewis is also being ordered to pay the family of Zachary Brooks $150,000. Now, Lewis was initially convicted of murder after stabbing Brooks to death in 2020. A judge deferred her prison sentence, which means if she violates her probation, Lewis could be sentenced to 20 years in prison. The judge in the case said he had no choice but to order Lewis to pay Brooks's family. Restitution is mandatory under Iowa law. This story is beyond sad. This is like punishing the victim. So this girl was 15 years old at the time. She ran away from abusive home life. She was sleeping in the hallways of apartments in the area. And this man, he took her in. And when he took her in, he began raping her and trafficking her to other men. And at one time or another, she just had enough and she stabbed him to death. And so they actually prosecuted her, which should have been clear case of self-defense, and it should have been over at that time. But they ended up prosecuting her. So her sentence was suspended, as I said. But what ended up happening is that she still has to pay $150,000 restitution. So the good news in all of this is that she had a teacher, a former math teacher, who put out a GoFundMe page, and as of this morning, it had over $335,000 raised. The goal was $150,000, and so right now her lawyers are seeing if they can use that money to satisfy the GoFundMe. Because you know what, at the end of the day, you should never have to pay your rape victim's family for what they did to you. She was a child. Let's make no mistake about it. She was 15 years old. She was raped. She was trafficked. She was out in Iowa, having no choice but to do this, and one night she just had enough, and that should be the end of the case.
You know, I'm happy that you touched on the GoFundMe. That's actually what I have here, and I'm looking at it now, Mimi. So if this morning it was $330,000, right now it's at $387,000. The goal was only $200,000.
Okay.
And so I think that I read this morning that a judge has to decide if this GoFundMe money can even be used to pay for the restitution, which to me is, why does it matter if she has to pay $150,000? Why does it matter where the money came from? Clearly, there are 10,000 people who donated, 10,000 people, and this keeps on growing, who feels as if she should not have to pay that $150,000 alone. And I really like that her teacher did this. And one thing I want to say that was on here, her teacher noted that she did not have a violent history before or after this offense, which is very important. And then also, if she meets the conditions of her parole, she will have a felony removed from her record, because this is happening in the now. She's, I believe, 17 years old right now. What's going to happen 10 years from now when she wants to get a job, or 5 or 6 years ago from now when she wants to get a job? So I'm hoping that, one, she will be able to use the money that was garnered from her GoFundMe to pay for this restitution, and also this can be removed from her record, because not to say that violence is right, not to say that this man deserved to be killed, but also some would consider this self-defense.
It should have never happened. It should have never been brought to trial, right? They should have never went to court on this. The police officers doing the investigation should have said, okay, if this was a clear case of self-defense, it should have just never got here. And the bigger picture is we need to see and understand why Iowa state law requires you to have to pay a restitution to someone who raped you, right?
And what was crazier even, Mimi, was not that you have to pay a restitution of a certain amount. The restitution is $150,000. Like, I read that in Iowa, the restitution rate, if you will, is $150,000. $1,000. So it's not like some people are going to pay $20,000 and some are going to pay $200,000. The restitution price is $150,000, which is kind of insane in 2022.
Exactly. So they should, if nothing else comes from this case, looking into why that is still on the books in Iowa should come from that.
I agree, 1,000%. A group of activists are asking California Governor Gavin Newsom not to extend the deadline for the committee to complete its work on a state reparations program. The Coalition for a Just and Equitable California want the governor to veto a bill sponsored by Assemblyman Reggie Jones Sawyer. Now, the bill would delay a report on the committee's recommendations on how reparations would be distributed to African Americans who are direct descendants of enslaved people. Coalition leaders say an extended deadline for the report would be demoralizing to Black people already skeptical of a reparations program in the state.
Newly released text messages from NFL Hall of Famer Brett Favre show he was very involved in a plot to use welfare money to build a new volleyball facility. That facility was at a school where his daughter played the sport. $1 million was supposed to go to the poor people in Favre's home state of Mississippi. The message also showed Favre tried to make sure the public would never know he was taking the money and grants from the state's welfare agency. In the past, Favre has said he did not know the money was coming from the welfare system. He paid back $1.1 million given to him by a nonprofit, but the state auditor says the former football star still owes $228,000 in interest. This story is very interesting. So, of course, like I said, the money in question, it was part of the $86 million that the federal government gave to the state of Mississippi. It was supposed to go to lifting the poorest families out of poverty. But it turns out that the head of the Mississippi Welfare Agency, his name is John Davis. Him and this other lady named Nancy New, they had sort of like this ring going where they would divert the funds. And so I guess what ended up happening is that Davis, he wanted to help out a friend, a buddy, and that buddy happened to be Brett Favre. He says that he did not know where the money was coming from. He had no idea that it was coming from them. It says that he asked a lot of questions. I don't know if that's true. Nevertheless, he took the money. So the guy is him and Nancy. So the Davis guy, who is the head of the Mississippi Welfare Office, and Nancy, they are also named as defendants in this law, along with Brett Favre. And so they are being they have to face the fire basically right now and see where that money was supposed to go, because it was literally supposed to go to a lot of Black and brown people that needed that money in the state of Mississippi. Mississippi is the poorest country, or excuse me, poorest state in the country. And so they took that money and they have been diverting millions of dollars for who knows how long, and they just got caught.
Mimi, I'm so sorry. You're going to have to tell me when to wrap up and go to the next story, because I have so much to say about this man.
Go ahead.
You know, first things first, he is, I hate to use the word liar, but he is not correct in saying that he had no idea that where the money was coming from. There are text messages that show August 3rd, 2017. If you were to pay me, is there any way the media can find out where it came from and how much? So first things first, you knew you knew that there was probably something. Maybe you didn't know exactly what organization.
But when you question it says that you
there
were
was something that was going on fishy about this situation. So you knew that you probably weren't supposed to have this money. So that's first things first. Second of all, welfare is something that white men, rich men in the United States have no idea how important it is to, like you said, poor Black cities in America. You have absolutely no idea how welfare affects us, how it helps our communities, what it is. So far removed. When I talk about far removed, I am speaking to him right here. So that's my 1 and 2 points. Second of all, in the NFL, he played in the NFL for the Packers, I believe, and someone can tell me if I'm wrong, for 15 years, and he made roughly $140 million in that 15 years, and that was I can't remember, whenever he left the NFL, it doesn't matter. So his net worth right now is about $100 million. So if you cared so much about your daughter's volleyball facility, many people online are wondering why be a rich man stealing from the poor when you can just take your $100 million and pay for the doggone stadium. You can send your own $5 million and pay for the stadium. You know what I mean? And I'm just really sick of when people talk about why when you get upset, we protest, you want to rush in and Target's going to lose this amount of money and these big corporations are going to make lose money, when the big corporations are the ones who are the rich stealing from the poor in the very first place. And I'm not buying his story that he had no idea that he was doing something illegal.
Yeah. You know, I mean, well, listen, since the money was federally appointed to the state of Mississippi, the Justice Department is now going to look into it.
As they should.
So it is a bigger issue than just now a state issue. And so not only are they going to have to answer to the state of Mississippi, they're going to have to answer to the federal government.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, they're not going to get away with it.
And he also should have to answer to the people that he stole money from, that he ripped money from, that had an opportunity, you know, to do better for their community and better themselves. So do better. Republicans in Texas have come up with their own version of history with a new pamphlet called Texas 1836 Project. It's supposed to be a response to the New York Times Pulitzer-winning series and book, The 1619 Project. Now, conservatives in the state say they are not happy with what was written in the 1619 Project. So, guess what? They decided to teach the state's history and exceptionalism. The Texas Legislative Committee in charge of the project has approved a 15-page pamphlet to be given to people who apply for Texas driver's licenses. Now, Governor Greg Abbott is raising the Texas Project. He's calling it patriotic education.
It took a couple of decades, but R. Kelly is going to be punished for sexually assaulting a 14-year-old girl. The R&B singer was found guilty yesterday on 3 counts of child pornography and 3 counts of enticing a minor, but he was acquitted of conspiracy to obstruct justice and fixing his state child pornography trial back in 2008, in which he was found not guilty. The decision comes as R. Kelly is already serving the start of a 30-year prison sentence after a New York jury convicted the singer last year of sex trafficking. The video of Kelly urinating and sexually assaulting the teen was first discovered back in the early 2000s.
A corrections officer and corrections officers, plural, in California federal prison are being suspended after they allegedly created an Instagram page with racist, homophobic, and sexist memes. An Instagram post, they were made by guards at the Victorville prison facility. Some posts accused female guards of trading sex for job promotions. Now, other posts joked about sexually assaulting female prisoners. There were also memes that degraded Black and Latino prisoners.
A Louisiana substitute teacher is being charged with offering to pay multiple students money if they tackled one of their classmates. 24-year-old Adrena Smith was arrested Monday by the Cattle Sheriff's Department. Prosecutors say Smith, who was a substitute gym teacher, offered the middle school students $5 apiece if they jumped on another child. She is being held with a $10,000 bond. Smith is charged with 5 counts of delinquency of juveniles. What kind of teacher and what is happening here?
I mean, what is happening? Another situation of, oh, maybe I can do this and not get caught, but like, how could you think that someone was not going to tell on you? Especially the parents of this young girl, I'm sure, were livid.
I would be livid.
Absolutely.
I mean, and, you know, she's young, 24 years old, right? But it's just so sad at this age she messed up her teaching career because who's going to hire you now?
Absolutely.
If that's what you're doing, if you're paying these, what did it say, middle schools? So we're talking, what, 12 to 13, 14-year-olds to jump on another kid for $5? Come on, girl.
You know, I always get confused about what age middle school is because I went from grammar school, like our grammar school was K through 8, and then I went right to high school. So with middle school, I have no idea. I've never experienced, can't relate. But this is an awful story, and that teacher should definitely not be teaching ever again.
Ever again.